Hello and welcome to stage 9 of Misspoke, a cycling podcast. And if you've missed the earlier stages, you can find them where you get all your podcasts. And there's a range of stuff there for you to enjoy. Now I'm going to start off stage 9 with another one of my cycling monologues. And if you've listened to the previous one, you'll know that these are affectionate monologues about people within the cycling community, and this one is called The Charity Rider. So anyway, are you going to sponsor me then? I'm doing this Marie Curie cancer ride, London to Paris, 3 days, 100 miles a day. It's going to be amazing. I'm hoping to raise 500 quid. Of course, the ride is costing 450 quid, but that's still 50 quid that goes to charity. There's a big group of us. So you're doing the Prudential ride. That's an amazing event. I'm doing it for Scope. No, I don't know what they do either, but it's a charity and I like their colour. It's like yellow, or is it green? I'm not sure. You get a special jersey. I've got a big collection of them. And they have their own feed stations, which the Oxfam riders can't use. I did London to Amsterdam earlier in the year. I raised like £100 then, but that was a nightmare. We stayed in these crummy hotels, and the van carrying our bags broke down, and the food was shit. No, I don't remember the charity. Shelter, maybe. Something third world, anyway. I tell you, they've got to get their act together. I wouldn't ride for them again. There's loads of them, though. I'm thinking of doing Cuba next year, 10 days. That's going to be really hard. It's for Save the Children, I think, something like that. Who cares? Anyway, they're all the same. Are you going to sponsor me then? I bought the Live Aid single, but not the American one. The song was rubbish, or the re-release. I mean, how many versions do you need? It's a lot of training, but I mean, I always wanted to go to Cuba. I tried for Vietnam, for Mind, but you had to raise like 1,000 quid or something. That's just mental. Oh, 10p a mile would do. That would cost you 30 quid. Oh, come on, that's nothing to you. You've just bought a new Colnago. Some people have got nothing, you know. God, people can be so selfish. You're doing Hell of the Ashdown. That's for charity, I think, or maybe not. I don't know. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not paying that. Even if it is for charity, you've got to be joking. You can pay me later. I've got a Just Giving page. I'll give you the address and you'll get a thank you email. Are you a taxpayer? They get a tax credit if you are. Oh, you're unemployed. I didn't know that. Maybe there's a charity for unemployed people. I'll do one of their rides. You could sponsor me. Oh, sorry. And now chapter 6 of my novella about the Liege-Bastogne-Liège sportive called The Monument. And if you've missed the previous 5 chapters, you can catch them in earlier stages of this podcast. Thursday was cold again, and rain fell steadily, bouncing off the pavement, streaking the windows. Don't fancy this, Clovis texted Eric at 8 a.m. Me neither. We can't let them down. Wouldn't be good. Would be bad, texted Eric. They might come looking for us. Don't say that. Makes them sound like bad guys. They are bad guys. So are we now. Let's wait till 10. Maybe it'll clear. By 10 a.m. the rain had eased, although it still fell faintly like a shroud. Clovis and Eric met at their usual meeting point. We'll just do a short one, said Eric. Go straight to the cafe. I'm cold and I'm wet, said Clovis. No such thing as bad weather, said Eric, just bad clothing choices. I make bad choices, and this is bad weather, said Clovis. They rode off, through the lanes, rivulets of water and grit filling the gutters and bouncing off their mudguards. Remind me, why do we do this, said Clovis. Because it's fun, said Eric. This ain't fun. They arrived at Jay's, damp and steaming, squelching in their shoes, faces streaked with dirt. The usual crowd was there, with the exception of Steve. Morning, gents, said Eric. No Steve. Steve's busy, said Bob. Sit down. Jay, usual for the boys. Coming right up, said Jay. OK, said Bob. This is what we do. You go to Liège on Thursday and come back Monday, as you planned. Is that it? Said Clovis. That's it, said Bob. What's the delivery? How does that work? Don't worry about it. It'll be taken care of. We'll contact you in Liège. How? I said, don't worry about it, said Bob, a bit sharply. Yeah, said Eric. Don't worry about it. You don't know where we're staying, said Clovis. We do, said Bob. I told them, said Eric. When? Said Clovis. Don't worry about it, said Eric. You can go now, said Bob. Don't use this cafe again before you go. Why not? Said Clovis. Bob turned away and started a Sudoku puzzle. Eric said, come on, mate, let's go. Out the back, Unlocking their bikes, Clovis said, Well what? Don't well what me. When did you talk to them? Yesterday. What do you mean yesterday? You went to the cafe yesterday? Why, without me? I have a life, Clovis. It's not just you, you know. I've got other friends, and I just popped in as I was passing. What, like Bill and Bob, the flower pot men, like Steve? They're your new mates now, Wolfie and Smack, our local craze. Get off my case. I just popped in for a coffee and they were there and we had a chat. And I can't see Wolfie and Smack being in their gang, can you? Couple of homeless dopers. What sort of chat? A planning chat? A this is how we do it chat? A I'm your new best mate smuggler chat? A get rid of that prick Clovis chat? It's my car, don't forget. I have a right to know. Look, said Eric, don't get on your high horse. They asked where we were staying in Liege, so I told them. That was it. You gave them our address? Yeah. Anything else? No. Sure? OK. Trust me, said Eric. I'll trust you, said Clovis, but why should I trust them? We're in it now, said Eric. We have to trust them. And if you can't wait to hear what happens in future chapters of The Monument, you can buy the book from Amazon or you can download it onto your Kindle. And now a word from my sponsor. Actually, I haven't got any sponsors. But if you know anybody who wants to sponsor a cycling podcast and is interested in getting their name on Misspoke, then send them in my direction. So my sponsor today is, or would have been if they'd chosen to do it, which they haven't, by the way, is Park Tools. Now, anybody who's interested in cycling and does a little bit of mechanic work in their garage, like I try and do, not very well, but there you go, will know Park Tools. They are American. They're from Minnesota, Michigan, somewhere like that, not sure. A state that begins with M, anyway. And they make some of the best cycling tools on the market in the world. They have a very distinctive colour blue. Blue handles, blue logo, blue website, blue everything. Anyway, it's Park Tool Blue. And they make a very wide selection of tools. There's something for everybody for the budding cycling mechanic, and they're very well-made tools. They're nicely made tools. They're strong. They're well-designed. They're made of strong materials, so they don't round your bolts. They don't fall apart. They don't break easily. They're nice cycling tools. So, Park Tools. If you want to start somewhere, I suggest you start with their little collection of Allen keys in a kind of pocketable, portable kind of bundle. You can get a larger set which has got sort of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 millimetre Allen keys on it, or hex tools as they're called. Or you can get a smaller set which has got sort of 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, that sort of thing. Anyway, Park Tools. Good tools for the budding cycle mechanic, which I like to call myself. And now, book review time. And the book I want to talk about today is Riding in the Zone Rouge by Tom Isitt. Is it? Yes, it is. It's Isitt. I've made that joke so many times and it never ceases to raise a smile on my 64-year-old face. Anyway, Tom Isitt has written a book about the Tour of the Battlefields, which took place in 1919, and which he describes as cycling's toughest ever stage race. I'll just read you a bit of the blurb from the back. The conditions were almost impossible. The riders had to stop every few kilometres to clear the mud from their chains and brakes. There was no let-up in the terrible weather. Visibility was awful and the roads were in a dreadful state. Every town and village was dark, in ruins, abandoned. Between Bapaume and Albert there was literally nothing, and no one, just an empty wasteland haunted by the ghosts of lost battalions. Now, this was a stage cycle race that took place in the northern France and Belgium in 1919, just after the First World War. And the weather was bad, as I've said. It was a very difficult stage. Now, what Tom Isitt has done is weaved together three separate strands. One is because it rides through the battlefields. He describes First World War scenes and action that took place on the route. Secondly, he uses contemporary accounts and newspaper reports of the race itself. And thirdly, he rides the route of the race in bad weather, bike packing, so stopping along the way, and he follows the full long distance route. Not exactly on the same roads, because some of the roads don't exist anymore, some of them have been turned into motorways, some of the tracks have disappeared, but as closely as possible he follows the route of the race. And he has written an absolutely brilliant book, and as an aspiring writer myself, the biggest praise I think I can give it is I wish I'd written this book myself. It is superb. He has extraordinary descriptions and very moving descriptions of the First World War scenes that he's riding through. He has done a tremendous amount of research in terms of collating contemporary accounts and newspaper reports and maps and so forth. And then he describes in loving detail the route that he takes and the ride that he takes. So if you're interested in cycling, and if you're listening to any part of this podcast, I'm sure you're interested in cycling. If you're interested in literature, if you're interested in the First World War, if you're interested in a great piece of writing, then I can highly recommend Riding in the Zone Rouge by Tom Isitt, available at all good bookshops. I'm going to finish this stage of Misspoke with another extract from my autobiographical memoir, My Life in Bikes. And if you'll recall, the last episode ended at a point where I was thinking of getting something a bit sportier than my Roberts touring bike. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. Cervelo S2, 2011. I've always been a big reader of magazines, and if I'm looking to buy something, I usually do a lot of research and buy a lot of magazines, and so it was with this project. I read reviews and articles and looked at adverts and decided that I wanted a Scott. HTC was big then, and Mark Cavendish was flying high, and a Scott seemed the way to go. John in the club had just bought a new bike from De Vere Cycles, and so I went there. De Vere Cycles in Streatham is owned by Maurice Burton, a top six-day racer in the 70s and a former British champion. I went to the shop and spent a very pleasant hour or so chatting to Maurice, as he told me about his racing days and the Rolls Royces he used to buy with briefcases full of cash. Maurice didn't reckon a Scott. He suggested a Cervelo. Despite my voracious appetite for magazines, Cervelo was not a well-known make then, and I was unfamiliar with it, but I started to read up on it, and the reports were good. I fell for it, and phoned Maurice and ordered a Cervelo S2. In my younger cycling days, top-end Campagnola was but a distant dream. But now I had money, and I set about rectifying that and spec'd the bike with a full Super Record group set, aero flat handlebars, and a nice fulcrum wheel set. It was going to be my forever bike, like the ring in Lord of the Rings. It was the one bike to bind me. And then Maurice phoned me and said the frame was delayed, and it would be about 3 months before I got the bike. I couldn't wait 3 months. I needed to keep up with the guys on the club run. There was a fellow in the club, a postman, had a boardman, and very happy with it, and one day announced that he was relocating to Wales and would be selling his bike. I wanted it, and decided it would be the perfect stand-in until I got the Cervelo. I phoned him. Yes, I'll buy it. Too late. He'd sold it to someone else in the club. That rankled. That was my boardman. It already had a place in my garage, and now it was no more. I felt cheated. I went to Halfords and bought a new one. Boardman, 2011. It was black, carbon, SRAM rival group set, which I'd never used before. I decided to break the habit of a lifetime and read the instructions, as the SRAM system was different from Shimano and Campagnola. Double tap, it said. So I double tapped on the gear lever. The gear went higher. I double tapped again. The gear went higher. This wasn't right. I checked the instructions. Double tap, it said. Something wrong here. Well, folks, you don't double tap. Instead, you push the lever all the way to go up and push the lever halfway to go down. You have been learned. I liked the boardman. It was light, fast, comfortable, and I could keep up with the guys. The Cervelo arrived eventually, and it was everything I wanted it to be. A beautiful red and black colour scheme, very light, very fast. aerodynamic with squoval tube shapes that sliced through the air. Despite my big bulk slowing it down, a low front end and those flat aero bars really seemed to make a difference. The Super Record was fabulous, smooth shifting, sturdy, built to last. Surely this was my forever bike. I sold the Boardman on eBay to a rider from Dulwich Paragon. Summer came and went, and autumn brought rain and winds. The Roberts was still a fine bike, and I still rode it occasionally when I wasn't trying to go too fast. But if the Cervelo was my summer bike, and the Roberts was my round-the-world bike, even though it didn't look like I was going any time soon, I was going to need a winter bike. Everyone has a winter bike, a hack in steel or aluminium with mudguards and strong tyres that didn't mind too much if it got wet, unlike the Prom Queen Cervelo that cried at the slightest hint of dampness. If you think, by the way, that my collection of bikes stops there, or even has stopped now in 2020, then I'm afraid you're wrong. I suppose it may have stopped now. Have I got my collection of forever bikes? I don't know. Does one ever have a collection of forever bikes? I know some cyclists do. Some cyclists ride the same bike for years and years and years, and they love it so. And I love my bikes, but I think the emphasis is on bikes. And I love the process of choosing a bike and finding a bike and selecting a bike and wanting a bike and buying a bike. And then when I've got the bike, I want the whole process to start again. And I know it's a weakness in me, but it's a weakness that I am lucky enough and have a wonderful wife who is understanding enough that I am allowed to indulge. So keep listening and you'll find out how my bike collection changes over the years. By the way, I'm back in my garage again. My son has been wanting to use his bedroom, so I couldn't podcast from there. And maybe the sound of the cars rumbling past my garage door just reminds you that there is a world outside, that coronavirus might have put us all into some kind of lockdown and me into quite a strong sort of quarantine. I don't think I've left my house for weeks. I'm not sure I've even been out of the front of the house for weeks. So here I am in my garage with the occasional car rumbling past outside, trying to keep you entertained at least for a little while. So I hope coronavirus hasn't affected you too much. I hope your family and you are getting through it okay. I hope you're enjoying yourself, and I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. So make sure you tune in next time for Stage 10 of Misspoke, and thanks for listening.